So who really deserves to be UFC Fighter of the Year? So today we're going to be looking at three individual fighters who I think are probably the most deserving of being nominated for this award. We're going to look at their wins and just compare them to each other's and see who really had the best year and who deserves to be UFC Fighter of the Year. Starting off, we're going to start off with Diego Lopes. So as you can see, Diego Lopes, this is his record currently. In the past year, he's beaten Sadiq Youssef at UFC 300 by round 1 KO. He then beat Dan Ige at UFC 303 by decision. And then he beat Brian Ortega at UFC 306 to arguably become the number one contender now in the UFC's featherweight division. Just let me make myself a bit bigger here. Yeah, so I think Diego Lopes has to be in the running for this. I mean, this guy went from essentially an unranked nobody, really, at the start of the year, to now arguably being the most deserving guy to fight Ilia Topuria next for the title. The Sadiq Youssef win, he got a massive KO over him at UFC 300, which is the biggest card the UFC's ever done, in my opinion, in terms of just names on the card. Like, we've never seen anything like UFC 300. Personally, I don't have Diego Lopes as fighter of the year, but I've seen a lot of people online talking about him, and I think he should be nominated for it, from essentially going from an unranked nobody to the number one contender. But the other two guys on this list, it's really between these two, but I wanted to throw Diego Lopes in, give him his flowers. The guy has had a great 2024, KO and Sadiq Youssef. The Dan Ige matchup, obviously, I don't think he looked particularly great in there, especially near the end of that fight, because he did kind of slow and gas out. But let's not forget, Diego Lopes beat up Dan Ige on like a couple of hours' notice. He was meant to fight Brian Ortega. The weight had changed and everything for that fight. It was really just not ideal circumstances for the guy, but he still showed that he is elite, because Dan Ige is a tough test for anybody in the featherweight division, and Diego Lopes clearly won that fight. And then obviously UFC 306 against Brian Ortega. If he didn't land that other shot on Ortega, he would have knocked him out. The combination that he landed to drop Ortega, the last shot that he threw, woke Brian Ortega back up. If he hadn't done that, he would have knocked out Brian Ortega in the first round. I'm basically certain on that, to be honest. But yeah, Diego Lopes, I think he should be in the running. I don't think he should win, but I do think he should be nominated and shown, given his flowers. Next up, we have got Alex Pereira. Now, this is fairly obvious that Alex Pereira was going to be on here. Alex Pereira, he's kind of the front runner at the minute. A lot of people are having Pereira. They're saying it's clearly Pereira. We're going to get into it later on. But anyway, this year, Alex Pereira has knocked out Jamal Hill at UFC 300 in round 1, KO'd Yuri Prohaska at UFC 303 in the second round, and KO'd Khalil Roundtree at UFC 307 in round 4. Now, what we need to factor in as well is he's been very active. He's had the same amount of fights as what Diego Lopes has, except all his fights this year, he's finished everybody. Plus, he is a defending champion as well. So I think that puts him in a better stead than what Diego Lopes should be, to be honest. He's now currently point for point number 2 as well. That's something we need to take into consideration. And he arguably saved 3 events this year. UFC 300, we didn't... Obviously, Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira wasn't the fight that we wanted to main event that card. It's the fight we got. And it gave us a good moment with Pereira knocking out Jamal Hill. Then we had the Yuri Prohaska 2 rematch, which was, as we all know, was meant to be McGregor-Chandler 2, or McGregor-Chandler, but McGregor had to pull out due to an injury, so Yuri Prohaska then stepped in and rematched Pereira on short notice. He then got head kick KO'd by Pereira in there. Another very one-sided and dominant performance by Alex Pereira. And then you have UFC 307, which is probably the most important card he saved, to be honest, because there was rumours of Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena headlining that card, which is frightening. Like, anyway, yeah, so then he beat up Khalil Roundtree. Another amazing performance from him. Now, in fairness, Khalil Roundtree did shock a lot of people in there. He was arguably winning the fight 2-1 before the stoppage came, but from rounds 3 onwards, from the start of round 3, you could kind of see it was coming at the end of round 2, but rounds 3 and then rounds 4, Pereira put on an absolute clinic and just decimated the guy. So Pereira has had 3 wins this year, all coming by finish and defending his title. It's going to be hard to beat Pereira, but I think this last guy here should be Fighter of the Year, and that is Ilia Topuria. Now, does Topuria have the same amount of wins as Diego Lopes and Alex Pereira this year? No, the guy's only got 2 wins this year, but those 2 wins trump like anything Pereira's done this year, in my opinion, and certainly anything Diego Lopes has done. This guy, in the space of a year, has knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, who's arguably known as the greatest UFC featherweight of all time. Ilia Topuria starched him. He then beat Max Holloway just recently at UFC 308 by knockout. He's knocked out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the space of a year. Now, a lot of people are saying, but Pereira saved events and he's been more active, which I get. I mean, there is an argument to be had there that Pereira should be Fighter of the Year. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to a fan vote if Pereira did win it. But I think you have to give it to Ilia Topuria. This guy should arguably be pound for pound number 2 at the minute, or 1. I mean, this guy has just beaten 2 out of the 3 greats of his division back to back and by KO. Ilia Topuria is on an insane run at the minute. The fact he's beaten Volkanovski and Max Holloway, 2 pound for pounders as well, in back to back fights and knocking them out, the level of competition has to be considered, in my opinion. And I think Ilia Topuria might not have had the same amount of title defenses as Pereira, might not have had the amount of fights that Pereira has, but has beaten the much higher level of competition. I think Ilia Topuria should be Fighter of the Year. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. And as always, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again in the next one.